Well, hey, life groups. This week, as a community, and really according to the entire, historic church calendar, we are entering into what's called Lent, the season leading up to Easter. And we sort of kicked off an introduction to that on Sunday through our service and a bit of my message. And if this happens to be before Wednesday, March 5th, and you still want to join us for our Ash Wednesday gathering at 6:30 on Wednesday, that's where we're really going to begin the season and journey of Lent together. So hope you could join us, or maybe this is after that. Hopefully some of you were able to participate in that. But as we enter into Lent together, we're having a series that's going to take us all the way through Easter called The Wood Between the Worlds, focusing on one thing, the cross, and what the cross of Christ means in revealing who God is and what that means for our lives. And I shared about how kind of some of the ideas and theology of this series is being supported by this book from a pastor and author and theologian named Brian Zahn called The Wood Between the Worlds. And for some of you that might be keen on reading something like this, it's a great book to get and maybe could be an additional resource throughout this season. But to sort of kick off the series, I shared the initial idea that the clearest revelation of God and a full revelation of God can actually be seen at the cross, that the cross is the epicenter of God's revelation. And the Apostle Paul even wrote in 1 Corinthians when he was sharing the good news of Jesus with the Corinthian church, he said that he resolved to know nothing while he was with them except Jesus Christ and him crucified. That in entering into the wonder and mystery of who God is and what God is up to in the world, knowing nothing other than Christ crucified sort of enters us into that mystery, I should say. But I also shared about how I think in our world, in some ways, the cross has become almost too familiar, at times cliche, because the cross has now become the most familiar and recognized and replicated symbol and image in all of human history. And so to help us kind of shake that up or have a fresh sense of the cross, I'm going to also here in this recap share just two images that I shared on Sunday in case they're helpful to process. I think they could spark some discussion. The first, and I mentioned that a little bit profane, but I think profound and helpful, was this cartoon image here of imagining two aliens coming to Earth for the very first time, coming out of their spaceship and encountering a life-size crucifix of Jesus. And one says to the other, you know what we should do? We should get the bleep out of here. That's what we should do. Because I think this cartoon is trying to get at and remind us or alert us maybe for the first time of how, a naked human being nailed to a cross is quite a startling and unsettling image. Then the other image that I shared is actually from ancient Rome, one of the earliest visual depictions referring to Jesus on the cross. And it's held in a Roman museum where you can see it here. There's a graffiti inscription that says, referring to some early Christian, Alexamenos worships his God. But as you can see in the image, God, referring to Jesus, has been depicted with the head of a donkey. Because here, this graffiti artist was mocking this Christian Alexamenos, saying that anybody who worships a man hung on a cross might as well be worshiping a donkey, or might be considered a donkey themselves. And it's these images, these depictions that I think have us return or re-enter the world of the earliest Jesus followers and how they were beginning to understand what Jesus had done on the cross. And Paul talked about it being an offense to the Jews, the religious Jews, and nonsense to the Gentiles. Again, you see that kind of represented in those images, but that to those experiencing the saving work of Jesus, putting their faith and trust in him, and frankly, their trust in his resurrection, we're actually seeing what God had done with all of his power and all of his wisdom revealing himself on the cross. So friends, that's what this whole series is about. You can follow along with some of the conversation starters, the questions in your conversation starters guide, referring even to some of these passages and reflecting on what does it mean if the clearest revelation of God is found on the cross of Christ? And what might that mean for us when it comes to forgiveness and peacemaking and understanding where God is in the hardest parts of life and the broken and painful parts of our world? or what that means to give us hope for new life and resurrection. So I'd love for you to chat about some of those ideas, chat about some of your earliest memories and expectations of the cross, and I invite you to be leaning into week after week this Lenten journey as we focus on one thing from now till Easter, the cross of Christ, and how it reveals who God is and what God has done for us, and experience more of the life of God among us. So have a great conversation. We look forward to this journey through Lent together.